Breakfast. Oh, crap. What? So I'm going to be doing a long one today, working on this. I'm going to try to do all the inks in the next hour, and then I'll try to do the color. The color is going to be interesting because I'm going to do some splashing around and everything else with the inks. If you have any questions or looking to get anything done in particular, let me know. Yeah, that Kennedy's can be annoying. I love them and I hate them at the same time. But I'm going to be watching it.
whole line of accessories and
some sketchbook stuff and
jewelry and scarves. So yeah, we came up with this venture called OVM, and I did that for a little bit before I took a sabbatical in I think 2013, 14. But yeah, I think this is interesting to show. You know, it's just a lot of design objects. You know, really rough. This is a good idea. I might turn this into something. This is a light in the shape of a crane, and the head is a flower, and the bulbs are kind of coming out of the neck. Wow, I see a lot of text on the live chat right now. Let's see if there's anything worth pulling out. Is there anything I should answer? Let's see. Question: how do you create your beautiful narrative illustration? What are your thoughts while working with elements, metaphors to create mesh together, and how? Well, you know, it's funny. A lot of times it's just following my intuition. And so I think it begins by, you know, consuming a lot of, you know, really good art and film and music. And, you know, that is all kind of mixing together in your subconscious. And then, you know, when I'm drawing, I try not to be too self-conscious about it. So I let the drawing flow. And, you know, it's only until after the drawing is finished that I see the references and I see where things are happening. And, you know, it's been a couple of times where I've made a drawing and then I'll go to like the Getty Museum and I'll see an old etching from, you know, Albrecht Dürer or even from, you know, the 1500s, and it'll be a very similar image. So it's almost like I'm channeling something through time. So, for example, there's a painting of mine called Traveler. So it's a girl riding on top of a unicorn. And it wasn't until like a year later I went to, I think it was the Hammer Museum. They actually had an etching up by this artist called Hondius. And it was almost the exact same composition of like a unicorn with its horn down, digging into the mud, kind of stirring up frogs. And I had a frog in my painting as well, and the horn was, you know, down you know, pointed down into the swamp, and it was really uncanny. So, you know, I think there's really something to be said about, you know, like the idea of like collective mythology. And, yeah, I don't know, past lives maybe. Oh, here's a drawing for an embossment from one of my prints. So you can see, you know, the sketchbook is just not meant for public consumption. It's just purely meant for me, you know, for me to be really messy and not really care. Yeah, but it's really cool to kind of look back and see just, you know, look at all the discarded designs. I don't know, there's a guy hanging off of the fangs of this face. I'm not sure why, but let's see. Any other questions? Oh, I think I already answered that question. But let's see. We have one here. Question: is your goal to get where Takashi is at? No, I think, you know, we all have our different paths. You know, Takashi, I think he, you know, he's obviously a legend because he's sacrificed so much to get to where he is. But you know, there's a lot of you know, suffering, I think, in his art practice. You know, he never has time. He's always tired. Let's see. Another question: do you have any favorite pieces you've created that inspired future work, or favorite animals that inspire your work? Yeah, I think you know, when I create these characters, I really love kind of taking them on a journey and bringing them into like a new context. Okay, maybe I shouldn't show that part. I was trying to see if my notepad was being revealed, but you know, these characters, they, you know, I've turned them into sculptures and they've been in paintings, and it's pretty cool to kind of like you know, take them on a journey through different compositions and, you know, show them different adventures. And the sculptures too, the sculptures take on different mediums. You know, there's marble, bronze, stainless steel, and they're all all different sizes. So I'd say that developing these characters is really cool because you can use them in many different ways. It's like your own personal cast of actors that can play out your ideas. As far as animals go, yeah, I mean, I like. There's also like bats. I love bats. Bats are like a good omen in Chinese mythology or culture. See any other questions? How is the balance of artist, father, husband? Well, I work from home, so that's how I try and keep that balance. And yeah, so far so good. I was married before in my early 20s, and that was a huge disaster. So, that experience I think made me a lot wiser. And I dropped off my son at school this morning, and I'll be picking him up later today. And yeah, I think it's important to have that balance. But since my studio is at home, I'm able to kind of be there, both for my family and for my art practice. Let's see. What is your sketching routine now while also working on fully rendered finished paintings? So to be honest, I don't sketch much anymore. So actually my sketches are more like this, where I'm quickly jotting down ideas. And, so for something like this, I quickly sketch it, I scan it into a computer, and then kind of, finish it, and then maybe print it out as a template and do a more refined drawing on top. I haven't written like a journal entry in years. Mostly now I make lists of things I need to do, and the greatest pleasure is in like crossing off that list, crossing off items on that list. Let's see. I've always heard that networking is the number one way to establish yourself in the art world. Can you speak on this? Well, yes, I would say that it really does help. I think early on in my art career, I didn't do a very good job of doing that. And, I always felt kind of unworthy and didn't quite know how to approach it. And I still don't. I would say I'm maybe doing a little better job of that now, mainly because of, what I've accomplished in the past that kind of opens a lot of doors for me. But yeah, it helps to kind of, go to the right school and the right program. But even then, yeah, you do need to kind of continue to, try to, gravitate towards the people that find your tribe, basically. I think that's really important. Find your community. And yeah, there are always going to be people that kind of keep you out, but you just kind of keep moving forward and making your work and finding your own tribe that way. Okay, I think we're going to take maybe one more question, and then we'll wrap this session up. Yeah, a nice comment about working with Avant Art. Yeah, yes, they've been fantastic to work with. Let's see. Do you ever struggle with staying motivated to work? No, I think actually the list making is very helpful because that just establishes what I need to do throughout the day, and my goal is to just conquer that list, and it keeps me going, keeps me motivated, and there's like an endless stream of problems that I need to solve. I wish I had more time to paint. I'm trying to figure that out right now, but yeah, it's a kind of a ever evolving process. So I guess with that, we'll call it a day. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope it was interesting, and yeah, we'll catch you on the next live stream.
Stop. Don't click off this video just yet. You saw the thumbnail and the title. and clicked on it for some reason. So whether you are here for some useful painting tips or tricks, or want to see what can be done with a 3D printer, or maybe you're just here to hear me waffle for 10 minutes, hang around till the end to see what I get up to, and then hit that thumbs up button, drop a comment below, and who knows, I might actually respond. Okay, let's get into this video. So every now and then I like to try out a different painting technique, and this one's obviously the comic style painting, sometimes referred to as Borderlands style. So that's why I've gone for this lovely looking little miniature by Print Minis. They're over at My Mini Factory, the link down below where you can get hold of this little chap. And I thought it'd be perfect for this style, as it's got quite a lot of nice sort of flat edges, and yeah, there's not too much texture or detail, obviously making it a lot easier to paint and to do those all important black edge lines. So I'm using the GK2 to print this little fella off, just because, well, it's one of my favourite printers. You can get lots on the build plate, and yeah, I've never had any failures, which is good. Although one thing I just found out, I've had this thing for months and months, I left a bit more clear protective on it, and it's always nice pulling that stuff off. So anyone new to printers, I have to say they really are one of the easiest things to use. You get your file, you download it on a USB, pop it in, push a few buttons, and yeah, away she goes. And the other reason why I love this GK2 is it heats up the bed. And it might not mean much to many people, but if you live somewhere cold, this makes a big difference in successful prints and, well, failed prints. And just a couple of hours later, the prints have come out, they've been in their little wash station, and now they're going in their cure station. And this just sort of fully hardens and cures the resin. So, well, it's nice and safe for us to touch, and we can then crack on and paint the thing. So there is a link down below, guys, where you can get hold of the GK2, as well as a code down there that gets you $80 off. And don't forget to check out the link down below to Print Minis for all their awesome stuff. And if you sign up to their email, you get 35% off. And so, yeah, I love all their stuff. There's a lot of grimdark material, which is awesome, as well as fun, cute little robots like this dude. And the other great thing I love about their stuff, it's all very modular, which means obviously you can print out bits separately, and then, yeah, you can sort of mix and match bits to make things, well, exactly how you want, really. And this guy only had a few parts, so it didn't take too long at all to put him together. And then he's ready to put my miniature holder. But as you can see, he's quite large. So the good thing about having a 3D printer, well, you can print things out whatever size you need. So I've obviously made a bigger miniature holder, or a large miniature holder, or a non-miniature holder. I don't know. I'm waffling. Anyway, this dude's all ready to paint. So normally I would prime them in black to do the old slap chop method. But obviously this guy is going to be, well, different to that. So I've got a nice yellow sunrise colour here. And this is by Colourforge. And obviously the great thing here is, well, this is the colour I kind of wanted him. I wanted him to be yellow. So primed him in yellow, and yeah, that colour's perfect. And now they've had a few sort of little transfers. And I like to use the ones that I've got by the Mighty Brush. As yeah, they do a whole variety of stuff. Awesome looking. And yeah, goes on a treat. I absolutely love using transfers now, as these do, well, they increase the look of obviously any kind of model, miniature, terrain, or vehicle you do. Yeah, because obviously a lot of these kind of things, you can't really paint them yourself. That being said, obviously these stripes, yeah, kind of could, but when it's so much easier and obviously neater to use a transfer, yeah, I'm definitely going to go with the transfer route. So the painting of this guy is definitely going to be easy. Say, I kind of want it to be yellow anyway, so having the perfect colour to prime him in is great. So yes, go check out Colourforge. As say, that's where I get all my primers from now. Great coverage, and they do a whole range of colours, which is just pretty cool. As I do love trying out new sort of painting types, guys, let me know in the comments if there's any sort of painting, well, tips, tricks you want to see me have a go at. Again, obviously, I'm a bit of a, well, I'm not exactly a noob anymore, as well. I think my painting certainly has improved, definitely over the last year or so, that's for sure. But say, I do love trying out new techniques, new styles, and yeah, just new ways of painting, because obviously this is a fun hobby. It's great to share with other people what can be done, and it's great trying out different things as well. That's the only way we're going to learn and see what we prefer doing. Obviously, my main sort of style of painting that I kind of always do now is the good old slap chop painting technique, as this does give me results that I absolutely love. But yeah, it is fun to try out something different. And this chap, yeah, because he is quite sort of a lot of flat areas, the slap chop paint technique definitely works better on more sort of detailed things. So yeah, that's why I thought this guy would be fun just to have a go at doing, yeah, comic book style. So the one thing I've noticed when obviously with the comic book style is obviously they have the sort of main colour, but then they do have like sort of areas, well, highlighted areas, I guess, but the highlighted areas aren't necessarily all just sort of raised areas. It just seems to be a bit here and there. And obviously the easy bit to do the black lines, I've got the good old Sharpie. This obviously could be done with a brush and obviously a bit of black paint. But yeah, sometimes my hand is steady, but my eyesight isn't always the best. So yeah, I thought I'd have a go using the Sharpie on this. And the great thing here is you don't have to be sort of too neat, too precise. If you do get some areas that are obviously like a fatter black line than others, yeah, that looks great. Because I say this is meant to be like a comic book style. So the comic book style is going to have areas where the sort of pen line is going to look thin. Sometimes it's going to look fatter. And yeah, it might sometimes look messier. And that's my excuse for, well, any messy areas. Yeah, they're intended to look like that, just to make this look more realistic as a cartoon style than anything else. But yeah, I did enjoy painting this. It does take a little bit longer than doing sort of the slap chop style, because obviously it's amazing how many lines need to be, well, edge painted or drawn in this case. And yeah, every time I thought I was nearly done, I found another area that needed, well, a bit more black lineage. But yeah, there we go. Say, didn't take as long as it probably could have done. Really enjoyed how it looks. And then once you've got all the edges done, it's just a case of going around doing some sort of like hash marks, little sort of scratch lines. Yeah, just lines here and there. Not sure why we do this. This is how the cartoon comic book strips have these bits. You guys might know more about why they have these. Is it to sort of indicate, I don't know, shading, highlights? I have no idea whatsoever, but this is what they all do, so I've done it as well. And yeah, really pleased with how the result came out. Definitely a fun little chap. So I printed out a base and did exactly the same of that. And again, really pleased with how that came out. And there we go. Let's have a look at it in all its glory. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Don't forget to let me know if there's any kind of type of painting technique you want to see me attempt. As, yeah, I'll have a go at giving, well, anything a go. There was another video on the screen, guys. It'd be great if you could click on that and see more of what I do. And if you can, like, share, subscribe, definitely leave comments down below. Just want to say a big shout out and thank you to all my lovely patrons, Chaos Cards, Print Minis, and the Colour Forge to help support the channel and mean I can continue making videos and having fun and, well, generally being a big kid. Okay, guys, you'll take care. See you in the next one. Bye for now.
How do you start writing a comic book?
I usually come up with a title first. But like this was last night, I got a email from a publisher friend of mine who says he's starting up a new comic and he has a cover illustration. Can I write a story in 5 pages based on that cover illustration? So then I got to figure it out and figure it out. And there's certain things he wants in that story. I won't say what they are because maybe somebody else will know with the story. But certain story elements. So I got to figure out how to fit those story elements into a 5-page story that includes the cover. When I write these stories for these magazines that I regularly write for now, Shutter, Vampirus Carmilla, frequently the artist will get hold of a great cover painting that he wants to use. And he calls me up and says, can you write a story based on this cover? And sometimes the cover has a lot of image. You know, for instance, it was recently he sent me one with it was a headsman, an execution. And the headsman was holding a certain kind of axe. And he was standing like in a pillar or a mountain skull of human skulls. And there were a couple other things. Might have had a full moon or something. And it had a title. And the title wasn't some generic title that would fit, you know, like Curse of the Mummy will fit anything with a mummy in it. Blood of the Vampire will fit any vampire story. But this one had a very specific title that couldn't be changed because he needed a title for it to get in a certain catalog that distributes the magazines. So I had to come up with a story that came up with that executioner, that particular type of weapon he was using to cut the heads off. All those skulls, mine had a full moon too, if I can remember, and that title. So I sleep on it, mull it over when I'm walking around or driving the car or watching TV or something. I keep mulling those things around, and sooner or later it comes together, and then it comes up with a last panel. And the last panel in a horror story has to be a shock of some sort, a surprise. If you're doing a superhero story, and it's an end of, if it's a complete story in itself, you need an ending where everything is resolved. The bad guy is caught, or whatever, you know. But if it's a continued story into the next issue, then it needs some kind of a shock or some kind of a surprise. All those things have to be taken into account. But to me, that's easy because that's where my strong points lay.
What is the structure of a comic book?
A structure, well, it's the first thing you have to remember is a comic book is visual. It can't be a bunch of talking heads. I mean, you can do it that way, but people are going to get bored of it. It needs to be visual. It's pictures. And the panels, there should be some kind of and not, a lot of artists can't do this. A lot of artists can only do nice like portraits and things, and landscapes. But telling a story from one panel to the next, continuity from one panel to the next, is a whole talent in itself. And then the words, the captions, the, the, the dialogue shouldn't repeat what you see in the picture. You know, I make the joke. I saw a panel in a science fiction comic book once. The picture showed a spaceship landing on a planet. And there's a caption at the top of the panel that said, "As the spaceship lands on the planet, dot dot dot." And then there's a dialogue balloon coming out of the spaceship, like somebody in the spaceship talking. "We are landing on the planet on our spaceship." You know, triple threat redundancy there. If you're landing on the planet, you don't have to say they're landing on the planet. And that's something a lot of writers don't know or can't figure out. When I was working for Russ Manning on Tarzan, he said, and I was making that mistake. I was being redundant in my panel. He said, no, that's not the way you do it. And I learned a lot from Russ as far as writing comic books are concerned. He said, but he wanted the panels to be, quote, dense with information, unquote. So when you look at that panel, you're seeing the action, but something in the panel tells you something different in addition to what you're seeing in the action. Or in the dialogue will use a word or two. It's surprising how much information you can put in one comic book panel. Just if a character is doing something, you can see what that character is doing something. You don't have to say it in the caption or have the character say what he or she is doing. But in the character's expression or body language, you can say a lot more. You can like they're doing this unwillingly, or they're being forced to do it, or they're not taking it seriously. So you've already given us a second piece of information. And if it's, let's say, a scene where there's mountains in the back and the sun is setting, and it has whatever the character is doing something has something to do with light, like it's a vampire trying to get to his coffin. You're as the sun's rising, you know that he's in a hurry because any minute the sun's going to come up and destroy him. So in that one panel, you can create 3 bits of information that are unrelated to each other, and that's the way I like to do my stories.
Do you use the same formula for every comic book?
I'm doing the same format now for the ones I'm doing for Shudder and Vampirus Carmilla because they have a house look, and the way I started, the ones I submitted, they were accepted with no problems. And the reason was when I first started, I said, "How do you want me to submit my stories. The Marvel style, where you go to the artwork first, or whatever. He said, just write a script, a full script, and that's what I do. And they've been accepting everyone. They've been fine ever since. But if I was I did a graphic novel based on my movie Tales of Frankenstein, and I had 5 artists working on it, 5 different artists, and I asked each one, "How do you want me to do it?" With the exception of one, all of them wanted to do Marvel style. So what I did with them, I wrote a basic synopsis. I sent them the movie script that was shot for the film, and then I sent them some photographs of the actors playing those parts, and they did a beautiful job, a wonderful job.
How much description do you write?
Well, if you're writing a character that's well known, like I have with Tarzan, Captain America, Vampirella, whoever, there's a house look. Everybody knows what they look like. I don't have to describe them at all. Sometimes I'll go into great detail if it's an unusual character, a strange hunchback with one eye or a peg leg, 2 colors hair or something, Then I'll describe all that if it's for a special purpose. At other times, I'll just say, let's get some diversity in the story and make some people African American, make some Caucasian, make some Asian, and I'm going to just go wild with it. If there's certain kind of clothes, like it was a sexy young woman, I'll say, ever wears, like a mini skirt or shorts or halter top, something like that. Or if it's a Western story, I do a lot of Westerns that are horror stories. I'll say, make sure that the guns don't look like a Hollywood gun, or sometimes I make sure they do look like a Hollywood gun, though. Or in some cases, I've used historical figures. I love using historical characters. I mean, Jesse James, Frank Nitti, Wild Bill Hickok, Wyatt Earp, and I'll say, look up online. You'll see photos of the way they look. So sometimes the description is very precise. Sometimes it's very general. Sometimes it's non-existent, really.
How do you keep the reader turning the page?
That's a great question, and a lot of writers and artists don't know this either. And again, I learned this from Russ Manning. And when an artist changes the arrangement of my panels, I go berserk, because their pages are designed to make you turn the page. The last panel on every right-hand page, you open the book up, you have a right-hand page and a left-hand page. The right-hand page, the last panel, should either be something surprising, a shock, or a total scene change. So the whole page is about somebody out in the forest. The last panel is a castle. And then you go into the castle scene. That makes them want to see what's on the next page. Or it's the guy walking through the forest, and the last page is looking in terror. What is he terrified about? You turn the page, it's a werewolf attacking, lunging for him. Or it's simply somebody, like in the story I just finished today, somebody's being stalked, and the last panel is them getting clubbed up, clubbed over. They don't know they're being stalked. Last panel is a close-up, clubbed over the head from behind with the beer bottle that knocked out cold. Those are the ways you end a page.
So it all has to fall on the right page.
Yes, or it should, ideally, but a lot of people don't do that. They don't know that.
How do you write cliffhangers?
A cliffhanger is just, when in my younger years and when I was a kid, I saw a lot of old movie serials where at the end of everyone was like 12 or 15 chapters long, and at the end of the chapter, the car goes off the cliff, or a building, they get trapped in a building, the building explodes. And I wrote novels that way, using those types of cliffhangers. First thing you got to figure out how to you're going to get your hero out of those situations. And there was an old story that there was a writer who wrote pulp magazines who was a notorious drunk, and he would write the stories, and then but he was always did the job. And there was this one thing where the hero got caught in quicksand, was sinking in the quicksand, and these magazines were published like on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and they were getting close to the deadline, and they didn't have an ending. They didn't know how the next story was going to begin, and how he was going to get out of the quicksand. So the writer finally showed up, and he was drunk out of his mind. And he staggers into the office, and he sits down behind a typewriter, puts a piece of paper in, cranks it up. He starts typing, and he types the whole chapter out. And then he walks out of the office. So they went and they grabbed the story out of him because they didn't go to the printer. And just started off with him saying, after Buck got out of the quicksand, and then he went into the rest of the story. So he never told you how he got out of it. And I don't know if that's a true story, but it's a famous story that's been going around for decades with pulp writers. And I consider myself, in many ways, a pulp writer. But I did a story once where the hero got locked in a safe at the end of the chapter. The next then the crooks come up to the safe, who know the combination. They open up the safe and they shoot machine guns into the safe. That's how it ended. I had to figure out a way of getting him out of the safe. And there's the old cliche line, well, safes, that's a secret. Safes are meant to be broken, not to be broken into, not to be, so you couldn't break into them, but not break out of them. But that wasn't good enough. So I have a friend in New Jersey who used to be an escape artist. And I called him up. I got his voicemail. I said, I'm not asking you to give me away any trade secrets, but I got my hero locked in a safe. How am I going to get him out of it so he doesn't get machine gunned? The day went by, and then at 2 a.m., he's a real night owl, especially when you think it's 3 years later in New Jersey. I was screening my calls, and I get this voice laughing his head off. He couldn't control himself. And I knew what it was, so I picked up the phone. And he said, nobody has ever asked me this question. Get a pencil, and this is how you do it. And in the story, I had the hero getting out of the safe. He said, what brand is it? We worked all that out. So I ended up dedicating the novel to him. And I said, to Jim Steranko, who told me how to get my hero out of the safe. And that's the way how I worked out of deadlifting. Usually I use in prose fiction, I use the standard ways they got out of them. In the old movie series, jump out of the car at the last moment, jump out of the window, the building before, just seconds before it blows up, and that kind of thing. But the safe one was really something.
Sorry, just one last thing. What is a pulp writer? Can you define that?
Oh, a pulp writer was a writer who wrote for the old, had a little different look now. Originally had was a writer who wrote for the pulp magazines, usually very fast, very cheaply. He got paid maybe a penny or a half a cent a word, or maybe a quarter of a cent a word. And they knocked these things out. They were usually very lurid and very lurid covers. They had titles like Weird Tales, Black Mask Magazine, Startling Terror. I mean, things that comic books used years later. And the stories were always really improbable. But, Tarzan, Fu Manchu, they all got their start in the pulp magazines. In later years, the pulp writers turned basically to paperbacks. They wrote some of the early science fiction stories, but also things like Doc Savage, the Spider, the Shadow, and I've written a lot of Frankenstein novels, the New Adventures of Frankenstein. I wrote 12 of them, and they're always with a lot of action, a lot of mad scientists. pretty heroines and sadistic fiends and mad doctors and monsters. And so I consider myself a pulp writer. In fact, I did one recent in the last few years about basically a masked character who put a mask on him called Jawbreaker. He gets his name because he hits a crook and he says he broke my jaw. Hey, that's a good name for myself. That's where that name comes from. But he got in all the old kind of fights and chases and cliffhangers.
How many written pages is a comic book?
Well, comic books can be any length. So in the old days, most of the filler stories, like in Action Comics, you would have action. Superman would have the long story, and then in the back it would be Zatara the Magician, and Congo Bill, who was sort of like Jungle Jim, and Vigilante, who was a Western character, and they were usually about 5 pages long. Then they been expanded to like when I was working writing a lot of stories for Marvel, I think the stories were maybe 17 pages long. When I worked at Gold Key, the full length books were 25 pages long, but the filler stories were 10 pages long. The stories I'm writing now generally are the ones for Shudder and Vampiro's Carmilla magazines. And those, even though some of the other writers write them in 5 pages, I write them in 6 pages. I found out with my own writing experience that 6 pages is ideal for telling a short horror story and has a surprise ending. The ones I was doing for Gold Key were the 10 pages. Thinking back now, I think they were probably a little bit longer than they needed to be. And I have a little bit of difficulty cramming everything in the 5 pages, even though I've done it for the same company, because the artist only one was available for 5 pages. But then we have what they call graphic novels. They can be 60-some pages long, and all done by the same writer and the same artist, telling one long story. I've done some of those too, and but I'm real comfortable now and have a really good time writing these 6-page horror stories.
Can you clarify what you mean by pages?
Yeah, by a page, I mean a printed page. What you see on the page when you buy the magazine. So one comic page of script might be half a page long, or it might be 2 pages long. It really just depends what you're trying to say and how much you have to describe. And sometimes you have a page with no dialogue for trying to make some kind of a dramatic point. So it has more impact if you just show the artwork or maybe a sound effect here or there. And you can do that on a quarter of a page, you know. Panel 1, long wide shot of heroes fighting. Panel 2, tighter shot. Panel 3, close up, fist hitting the face. You can do that in a page or less.
How long does it take you to write a comic book?
The ones I'm writing now, the 6 pages, it takes me about 3 to 4 hours to do the first draft, which then I tinker with in the evening, adding word, changing a word here and there. The next day I do a rewrite. It usually takes me about 2 hours maximum. Then I let that sit, and then I sleep on it. And if I come up with any ideas in the morning, sometimes I come up with a major idea, but usually it's just a word here and there, or adding another panel or taking a panel out, something like that. So it's really you might say it's a 3-day process for a 6-page story, but most of the time I'm doing something else. I mean, very little time is actually spent writing.
So is it usually you come up with the title first or the cover art is given
I
to you?
usually, with these horror stories that I do, it's either one or the other, usually. There have been times where I've come up with an idea. Hey, let's use Jesse James in this story. And I don't know what the story is going to be, what the title is going to be, or anything. I just know I'm going to do some research on Jesse James. And then I find out all these things about his life and career. Hey, this will work in right. This will fit right in. Like I opened up the the Wild Bill Hickok story with him getting assassinated. The first panel I got 3 panels at the top. This hasn't been published yet. 3 panels at the top of him and Dodge in Deadwood, the town of Deadwood, saying goodbye to Calamity Jane, his girlfriend. And I gotta go to this poker game. Because be careful. She says, remember your eyesight's starting to fail. I know. And so the big splash panel, which is that big panel you always see on the first page, it's Bill Hickok from the back sitting there, and Jack McCall ready to fire, pulling the hammer back, ready to shoot him in the back of the head with the dead man's hand he's holding. That's the way it opened. And then that went to him being zapped away by aliens, called angels, aces and aliens, as opposed to aces and eights. So I thought of that scene of Wild Bill Hickok. Then I had to do some research on Wild Bill Hickok. I did one with Frank Nitti the other day, and it's already out. I think it might be in the current issue, where Frank Nitti is being stalked by a vampire that he inadvertently created, and he calls up Elliot Ness, his main enemy with the Untouchables, to help him get out of this jam. And Elliot Ness, who can't stand Frank Nitti, is no longer in the Untouchables. He's already getting ready to leave for Pennsylvania, wherever he went. And I had to research all the stuff about Frank Nitti. All I knew was what I saw in the TV shows and in the movie. And but I love doing that research. I love the stories where I can put in a historical character that I have to do some looking up on. And those are when I get the most pleasure out of it, the most satisfaction. But all in 6 pages.
Brought to you by a paid sponsorship for Fable Maker's Deck of Many Things. Magic Mouth. It makes an object speak. Well, it makes it speak a message up to 25 words, as long as certain caster-defined conditions or triggers are met. It's generally used by puzzle wizards to outline the rules of their elaborate inner sanctums, usually by way of poetry. Weirdly, one of the spell's greatest assets isn't its effect so much as its longevity, because it sticks around until it's dispelled or it's supposed to turn off, and its conditions, its trigger. The trigger of the spell has to be a visual and or auditory condition met within 30 feet of the object. The trigger can be as detailed as you like. The object has to be unattended when you cast the spell, but once it's cast, you can move the object. So, for instance, you could work with experts to create a list of all the creatures who are vulnerable to fire. Then cast Magic Mouth to alert you anytime you're up against a creature of that type. Do this a few times with a few Magic Mouths, and now your equipment is yelling out tactical advice. It could trigger anytime a creature within 30 feet that isn't on your exceptions list pulls out a weapon. It could also scream anytime a thief touches the party's important world-saving MacGuffin. In fact, the party's world-saving MacGuffin could be the object scream. It could work as a permanent alarm spell. It could also work as a pretty horrific psychological tactic. You can program objects to daisy chain. So a series of mouths can be set off by one another, depending on various conditions. You can use Magic Mouth as a kind of a private message spell, where it only activates in the possession of a particular person, or if a code word is spoken. There's a lot of talk about a Magic Mouth phone network, which I can only imagine would be incredibly loud and incredibly expensive. It's been posited that you could use it to detect invisible creatures by essentially saying, if an invisible creature makes a sound or displaces earth, dirt, or dust, go off. There's probably some wording where you can get the exact location of the creature or get your staff to tell you when it's pointing at the creature. Finally, yes, there's talk of creating Tom Pewter, but I don't know who he is, and I don't know why you would want to make him out of mouths. Thanks for watching this episode, brought to you by why you would creating Tom Pewter, but I don't know who he is, and I don't know why you would want to make him out of mouths. Thanks for watching this episode, brought to you by a paid sponsorship for Fable Maker's Deck of Many Things. They're running a Kickstarter right now. Basically, it's the Deck of Many Things, but with more extensive rules and probably the sickest art that's ever been on a Deck of Many Things. Hit Point Press sent me a sample foil card, and it fucking rules. Check it out. Links in the description or thedeckofmanythings.com.
and welcome to your favorite YouTube channel, Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm at Discord.
And before we begin, I have a couple of things to remind
If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm
Cartoonist
just
Kayfabe-tober, and this is our list of
I just have a
prompts.
lot
If
to
you're
do today,
unfamiliar
so I'm
with
just working.
Kayfabe-tober, it is a list of prompts, one for each day of something for you to draw out there. If you take on the Cartoonist Kayfabe-tober challenge, we want you to make sure to tag us in your post of your pictures. We have a very creative audience. We've already seen a bunch of these beautiful drawings, so make sure you tag us so that other people can find your work as well. I also want to remind everybody we have Cartoonist Kayfabe Patreon. There are 3 different levels that will get you access to our videos early, and at the King Kayfaber level, you will get all of our videos first because you are sitting in on the recording session. This gives you a leg up on the Kayfabe effect. If we show something off that you want to add to your collection, you'll be the first one looking for it. If it's rare, if it's hard to find, you'll get it before it disappears or before it goes up in value. So check out the Patreon, see what level works for you. And finally, we are a daily comic book YouTube channel. We have 1,500 videos featuring all sorts of comics and creators. You can check those out on the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube homepage. Find your favorite titles there. All right, Ed, today we are looking at Gaijin taking their turn with Akira. These are the epic issues of Akira, the last 2 issues, 37 and 38. And they feature backup material by a wide range of creators. Kind of hard books to find, but I got hold of these not too long ago, and we figured, hey, let's show off some Alex Toth version of Akira and a whole assortment of others. So we're going to be focusing on the back matter of these 2 issues in this video. And
With actual comics too, which is pretty rad, man. You got a Mark Texiera story.
how about that? Some beautiful Mark Texiera fully painted artwork.
Yeah,
Might be as good as he gets as a painter.
absolutely. And you never see him do kind of regular humans, right? It's always these like bombastic, muscled figures and stuff. So seeing him tackle this is great. And these are kind of like satellite stories. Joe Duffy, I think she was principal translator.
I don't know if she does translation or if she does sort of adaptation from the translation, but yes, her name on all of these books is English script. So definitely somebody who's very close to this material. And you can imagine it's emotional, man. I don't know when this starts serializing, but I think this is 1995 when it finally finishes up. So you've got 5, 6, 7 years working on this title. Probably knows these characters well and probably had some fun writing some of this back matter. And Kent Williams is our other contributor, and I think this is the only contribution. It's not like a big pinup by him.
Right. These are satellite comics, so it's just characters are kind of adjacent to the kind of main story. Kind of this is what's happening while all the other stuff is going on, kind of off camera. So this is a school story. This is Yamagata. He's the dude that catches a bullet and dies pretty early.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. You can see these references. I think this may be an actual painted version of an Otomo panel.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat to see that stuff come in and out. It's kind of a cool way to do ancillary material like this because it really feels like it's in the world.
Yeah, Mark Tex is he's a continuity studios guy, and you'll hear Neil Adams talk about when Mark Texiera settles down and really gets into it, like he's better than anybody, and you see him using those kind of chops, so like with continuity, photo reference is a thing, like capture all details correctly, and he accomplishes it well. Great lighting.
And this is before there's going to be a showdown between all the street gangs. Tetsuo with the clowns and then everybody else kind of organizing against them.
Totally.
And this is just set up for that.
Yeah, this is the gym teacher that smacks them all in the face, who is based on Antonio Inoki.
Oh, I didn't realize that. You can see the big chin right here.
Yeah.
That's cool. How has that never come up in our conversations, Ed?
It has.
Oh.
Glad you like it, nerdy.
Maybe I didn't catch the reference. But it's
I'm working on it. I'm gonna plow through today to get it done. I was just checking the dates. I'm like, oh shit, I got some stuff due soon, so I gotta get some artwork done and out the door. So
but it's not. It's still that gym
pay the
teacher,
bills.
and he just kind of is a folly for the whole comic. I mean, that's just what it is. You could kind of keep flipping and show off the cool artwork.
By the way, this hand, I feel like you could do a zine of just that hand. Like this is a shorthand version, no pun intended, of that hand reaching out. That's a very comic trope visually.
Yeah.
And you can see, like, each time he comes, the gym teacher comes in, something goes wrong. Something foils him.
Trips on his whistle, trips on a pen. I actually remember doing that as a kid because, like, there would be little tools and stuff, little
pens and pencils on the hallway floors and shit, and you'll go sliding a little bit.
I thought you were the one putting the pen down like a trap. You were a victim of the pen on the floor.
This is another piece. One of my favorite Otomo drawings in the first volume of Akira, the first Tankobon. It's the first time I ever saw somebody draw.
What do you think of
and it's not really captured here, but it's Hineda, shooting the gun that the guy is still holding.
Oh, Elon, does it look okay? It's a bitch to draw him, man. I know when I do the shading, I gotta get a bunch of pencils out, but it is a bitch and a half. Everything else was easy to do, man, but just getting his face took me forever yesterday with the pencils. It's also on the videos from yesterday too, in case you're looking. I'm gonna be doing some cool splatter effects with black and red ink in this area. So I'm gonna probably lay down the grays first, lay down the colors on these. Background's gonna be probably like a nice neutral kind of green. I'm gonna use a little bit of green throughout everything. Just a like slight alien homage. And this is just gonna be one bloody mess.
Tetsuo may be influencing that
Looks
race.
good. All right.
Influencing that race.
I think I'm just so close to the subject. He has a weird fucking face, man. Not for nothing, but he has a weird.
Of course, Yamagata dies. He's a no win kind of fella, and then as soon as
he finally wins and he can't.
I think it's as simple as that.
Can't enjoy it. Dave Gibbons here with the pin up in the back. It's funny how the credits are set up. Like I had that front page and it has Kent Williams, Tex, and Joe Duffy, and does not mention Dave Gibbons, which seems like a pretty big oversight. The guy's huge in 1993, but I think this may be early digital work for him. You can really see the digital coloring in the background.
It's that era,
and he's talked about learning the digital around the early 90s. So it feels like that's some early work from him on the computer side of things.
Yeah, really no excuse, because I think these books took a long time to come out. They were solicited for literally years. Maybe 2 years before they started to pop out, and I wonder what is that lag? And then I'm like, is the lag really just the back matter stuff? Or the guy?
Surely not.
Or I would hope not. But then, like, what is? It's like, Steve Olaf has been coloring
watching Cartoonist Kayfabe
for years and years. You would think
doing this since I'm going to be on all afternoon.
The work, but then maybe
thinking right now we're already hitting 1 o'clock.
The work was kind of
probably
coming
be
out
on
still
till
while
2 at least, but maybe until 4 because I really just finished this.
So maybe they kind of caught up to it.
Just like that, I can do one big video about this.
I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question.
With yesterday's video too.
This is much more loaded.
Yeah.
You can see the people listed here: Mark Chiarello, which is this piece, Mobius, Joe Mad, George Pratt, Mike Allred, John Romita, Alex Toth, Kevin O'Neill, and John Van Fleet. So pretty big list here of contributors for this particular issue. This video is brought to you by the books that we make. The best way to support Cartoonist Kayfabe is to buy our books. I have Street Angel, Princess of Poverty coming out in November. You need to pre-order that one now. It is part of a set with Street Angel, Deadliest Girl Alive, collecting all of my Street Angel comics. October 26th, I will be selling my self-published comics on jimrugg.com. That includes True Crime Funnies, the BW zine, and the 1986 zine. And Hulk Grand Design, my contribution to the Grand Design mythos, is sold out at the distribution level, so pick that one up if your comic shop still has a copy. Ed's Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus will be in stores in November. I recommend that you pre-order this one. Get your name on a copy because these are going very fast. X-Men Grand Design Trilogy trade paperback will be out in November, collecting all 3 volumes of X-Men Grand Design by Ed Piskor. And Red Room, Antisocial Network, and Trigger Warnings are already out, and in January they will be joined by Crypto Killers. And now back to our video. And Larry Hama, Brett Blevins, Steve Buccellato doing the color here. The comics creators not listed in that tribute. The tributes are just pinups, I guess.
Yeah, man. Itadakimasu. It's the one word I know, man. You say that before your meals.
Ah, gotcha. This is I forget her name too, but she was like the big enforcer on the side of Angels. But I always liked her in the comics when we were going through book by book.
She
was just this badass, and she's sitting here eating whenever like a drone scout spots her.
There are parts, certainly even I think on the Tankobon covers, where she's holding kind of the same guns that Roadblock carries, know, and Larry Hama is basically the creator of Roadblock, so I could see how he could gravitate to this character. because it is kind of like treated as such. You know, this is an unstoppable force.
Yeah, and a very kind of a short, simple story, right? This drone is the first thing, but what it's bringing is the tank, bringing the security forces.
Right.
And you see the tank coming down this alley, the guy that was sleeping in the background running away. It's almost like Jim Shooter storytelling, you know, like 101, where you see the setups, and it all fits together very tightly.
Yeah. I mean, Larry Hama is he's storytelling 101.
Hell is in
Air
here?
gun jams, which is the worst thing that can happen when you're in a gunfight with a tank.
We're making a comic, man. You gotta have some complication.
Yeah, so
Continuing to eat her yakitori skewer, by the way.
right,
You know, she needs these arms need protein.
but we're going to need that skewer. So finish up your meal here, and let's use that skewer to unjam the gun.
Looks like she's packing.
It does look like that.
And a jam piece. Yeah, she's a fucking badass, dude. It's cool seeing Brett Blevins stretch himself this way.
Yeah, his art looks pretty good in here, I think. Even with like the screen tones and stuff, I feel like you're doing some stuff as an artist here to approximate looking at manga and thinking like, what's there? I feel like that's some of the screen tone and just the detail of buildings everywhere. You know, it's an American version, but it's still sort of, I think, looking at your source material and drawing from it. By the way, if you want to watch humans fighting tanks in comics,
All right,
I would
nerdy.
recommend Joe The Fixer.
All right, Jesus.
All right, so we get a couple of pinups in between the next story. This is Mobius pinups. These pinups are kind of amazing. Like when you think of the range of artists that are contributing, Joe Mad, pretty young Joe Mad, I assume here, and he's throwing out some Shiro and some stuff in the graffiti here, right? Referencing some of his manga heroes, no doubt.
Otomo rules.
Yeah. George Pratt, Mike Allred. Pretty good placement for Mike Allred early in his career. You know, if this was done in the early 90s.
Yeah, I think he was, you know, doing his Madman stuff at that point. But it's still, you know, using the Kill and stuff. The only other real places I saw him do that would be like his Big Fat Kill pinups, and maybe, you know, that early like Caliber graphic music stuff. So he gets rid of that pretty quickly, and it's fun to see him colored this way because I feel like the color goes back to that later when he's doing his collaborations with J Bone and doing that kind of cell shaded looking stuff where the characters have a black line but the backgrounds are sans black line but this kind of color.
Yeah, it's a neat piece. 1994, so he might have been hooked up with Legend by that point.
Yeah.
So definitely not a new guy, but also I don't think he'd done much at Marvel or DC yet. John Romita offering a piece up probably towards the end of his tenure as art director of Marvel. And interesting to see like a classic Marvel approach to an Akira character.
Yeah, man.
Kind of cool. And Alex Toth, of course. I think I have this reprinted in black and white in one of those Toth book collections somewhere. But again, what a strange get.
Yeah, you know, probably speaks to Chiarello making that happen. I would bet you.
Makes me wonder too. Was he given like a couple of these books, and if so, like what on earth did he make of this stuff?
Totally. This is a chilling piece.
It's great.
I think it would work better in pure black and whites. You know, it would make it feel brighter. The light and the sort of white heat of everything. It didn't need the color, but it's a chilling piece because it's so obviously a child. Isn't that fascinating? Like his ability, like it's so obviously a child. Probably the size of the head helps.
Right.
And you know, this is beyond that episode of Twilight Zone where the kid turns his parents into a jack-in-a-box or whatever. It's like this kid like can destroy the whole world.
Yeah, any chance to see some Toth, I'm always going to be happy with, and it's cool to see it in this context. You know, especially seeing like other people interpret Akira and what they come up with. Kevin O'Neill leaning into the monstrous side of this, maybe the kaiju side of Akira.
Makes sense, right?
Totally. Still great, though, with his design. This is another piece where, honestly, I'd be curious to see this one in black and white. There's a lot of color applied on this page, but you can see he is spotting some black here in these, like, foreground elements. So, great artist. And then John Van Fleet, and I would not have recognized that for him. I like his art. He did that Typhoid Mary series. Is probably my favorite of his. This is a little bit out there. The color palette's kind of in line with what I see with him. He does a lot of those browns and reds. But otherwise, it's just photo collage.
Yeah.
All right, we've got one more comics story here. Warren Ellis, your writer, Terry Shoemaker art, and Brian Buccellato again on the color.
This is wild Terry Shoemaker art, because from what I remember of Shoemaker, from the stuff that I've seen in the past, it was very kind of esoteric style. It was very wild style, and this is firmly rooted in the Wildstorm kind of Jim Lee school of things, and the writing that Ellis does. There's some clever stuff early, but then it becomes so on the nose that it makes me think that the editors had a hand in that, to be honest, because it's so on the nose. Like the whole motif of candy, and one kid ate the most candy. Like, that's reasonably clever as far as, mainstream comics goes, because we know what Akira is, and we know that the importance of the pill and all that. But then they're just going to spell that out later, and that's whack.
Right.
That's corny as fuck. But we got, once again, man, these like child espers is the scariest thing ever, man. There is a movie. Oh my goodness! So maybe it's called The Innocents. It's like a foreign movie, Scandinavian film, pretty sure, but it's basically Domu. It's Domu, almost part and parcel, like the whole thing, with the exception of replace the old man with another kid.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense, right? But it has a lot of set pieces and stuff, like exactly from Domu. It ends in the same way, and it's so effective. It's a fairly newish movie within the past 5 years.
Man, I want to see it now.
Oh, it's great.
It sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like Shoemaker does pretty good work here.
Yeah, it's just so crazy. Like, whenever the mandate comes that the money-making way to draw is the Jim Lee way, to see these guys kind of like really sell out their own styles, it's a sad thing to me.
It is sad. It becomes like this. Wow, it's like the last Marvel House style.
Yeah,
and it's weird. It's kind of a novelty. Like, I enjoy it because it's a novelty, but as a thing of like, this is what our company is now.
Yeah, because
not so much.
Yeah, because the artists, they become caricatures of themselves, and when like Herb Trippy, who's done something for so long, but he was working in a house style. I talked to him 3 weeks before he passed, maybe, and I told him all of my favorite things that he's done, and I mentioned the Rolling Stone cover. He's like, that's my style. Like, that's really how I draw, and I want to get back to drawing the way that I draw. He's a guy who had to use that style. Alex Saviuk has to fucking draw far apart crosshatch and shit. And what he was doing, a Romita or a Kirby-ish thing beforehand. Yeah, it's not a good look, and for your career, it's very short-sighted because you're not going to lose work whenever this goes away, and then you're going to have to like have a learning curve and figure out the next style to draw. You're going to have to learn to draw like Brian Hitch or Frank Whiteley now.
Do you remember what else Terry Shoemaker did? I think I've seen him on
comics.
Spider-Man, I was going to say. Yeah, X Factor, I remember that.
Yeah, like the X books.
He didn't do a lot, though. Like, I can't think of a lot of stuff that he did.
Yeah.
He might have only been there for a couple of years. And I mean, at 1995, like, probably a lot of people are leaving the business.
I sometimes confuse him, too, with Bogdanov, because certainly in the style approach, but there would be, like, one odd Superman book or one odd X book, and it would be Shoemaker or Bogdanov would be, either or. The kind of more wild style in those families of books.
Here's your heavy-handed metaphor now of the candy. We see the pills dropping
right
in place of the candy,
and then it just becomes like a kind of retelling of.
Yeah, I don't know what you can do if you were doing a story set in the Akira universe. It's kind of such a tight story. Like, you almost have to do something kind of, I don't know, tiny in between.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's I think there's plenty, and I think if we had the opportunity, like, we would come up with some really, really cool stuff. This makes me wonder who Warren Ellis is at this time. Is it the guy who writes Doctor Strange, Warren Ellis, in 94, 95? Certainly before Transmetropolitan, and Transmetropolitan is before Planetary and the Stormwatch and the things that really.
Did he ever run on Excalibur and the like?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he did some Excalibur early on, but it may have been before this or maybe concurrent with this. Yeah, I don't know. It is interesting, these guys who, when you think of their career, it's totally different and after this. So different stuff, you know, like you see this with a lot of the writers especially, but I guess artists too, where their early work, it's almost like doesn't totally fit what you think of them, but you take what you get.
Right.
You know, like you're trying to get into the business, so whatever door opens is the one that you walk through, and then you start to move towards the stuff that maybe speaks to you a little bit more. But kind of cool. I was going to throw this out to the Kayfabers. I'm missing 2 issues from this run. So if anybody has a 3 and a 34 that they don't want, send them to the PO box. But I'll probably track those down on my own. I'm not a completist, as everybody knows, but whenever you're 2 issues away from a 38-issue run, especially something like Akira.
Yeah, and shouts to Alika Seki, because he sent these to us on like one of those crazy mail weeks.
Yes.
Where it was between the stack of Akira or Brendan McCarthy's personal copy of Swimming Purpose. So we did that flip, and I won the flip, and I felt like it was important to have Brendan McCarthy's copy.
Yeah.
But I still think of these Akiras all the time.
Yeah, they're cool.
Like that was a real Sophie's choice.
As it so often is.
That flip, yeah.
All right.
Good to go.
God.
Kayfabers,
Wish I was a more accurate
subscribe to the
penciler
YouTube
so I don't
channel,
have to
hit the
deal
bell
with so
so we
much
get
of this
notified when
cleanup.
new videos are available. Cartoonist Kayfabetober is upon
I'm
us.
still, like,
2023. These are
bits
your
here and
drawing
there.
prompts. Make sure that you tag us, add us. Make sure that we see these pieces that you put together so that we can share those with our audience at large. Boost your numbers, get your name out, and it's always a pleasure to see what you guys come up with. We are a daily YouTube channel, and with more than 1,500 videos in our filmography at this point, some stuff might have slipped your radar, and we might have talked about your favorite comics. Give the channel a search for your favorite titles,
Jesus.
check out those episodes, and if we
Smooth
did not
news,
cover
boy.
your favorite comics, put something in the comments. Let us
Just
know
in
what those
case.
comics are. We can push those comics a little bit higher on our.
You want to check out my Kickstarter that I'm doing right now with my new comic? Everything else.
By the King Kayfabers on our Patreon. They get access to all the videos before anybody else. They're hanging out with us right now in a live stream recording session as we put together this week's worth of videos, and we are very much in appreciation for the King Kayfabers who are supporting the channel. Ultimately, though, the videos are brought to you by the books that we make. Before you is a sample of our bibliography to date, but we are working all the time. And coming October 18th is the Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus. You guys have been watching this comic kind of develop over this past year of 2023, and it is almost upon us. And about 75% of this print run is accounted
Some
for
of it I just don't
already,
have
which
to
I
be
have to
there.
absolutely thank you guys for. What that also suggests is if you even think that you want this, you better order it up quick, because that last 25% is going to go pretty quick whenever stores sell stuff off the rack and then have to re-up. 500 plus pages, 150 pages of additional material, and best book I ever made. Please scoop that up. Not the only holiday effort to come in 2023. In November comes the X-Men Grand Design Trilogy trade paperback. It's crazy how this one works, because it's probably off to the press right now, mere weeks before its release. So I don't have a comp copy to show off. So it's going to be smaller in scale than what you're looking at. But these big volumes, some of them are out of print, and it's going to have all of my X-Men Grand Design work in there. Please check that out, man. It's perfect jump on point for any X-Men fans or enterprising X-Men fans if you're curious about that title. Red Room has been my focus the past couple of years in terms of new comics. 2 trade paperbacks out. The Antisocial Network, Trigger Warnings. It's Halloween time, right? Read some tongue-in-cheek horror potboilers. There's going to be a 3rd volume coming out in January. It's called Crypto Killers, and it is the best round of comics yet. Each one of these
Who needs to go to the gym?
self-contained,
Just
though,
be-
has 4 complete
just
self-contained
erase.
stories. If you see either of these out there in the wild, give it a shot. Jimmy, tell the people what you got going on.
Hulk Grand Design is my contribution to the Grand Design mythos, and it is sold out at the distribution level. So pick that up if it's sitting on your comic shop shelves right now, because these are going to become harder and harder to find. Coming out in November, Street Angel Princess of Poverty from Image Comics. You need to pre-order that one now. It reflects all of the Street Angel comics that are not in Deadliest Girl Alive. Also available.
I don't like using my hand too much because sometimes you get the grease on the hands on the paper, and later on when you go and color, you end up fucking with weird fingerprints and shit.
At the end of October, October 26th, that will include the BW zine, highlighting panels and art and ads and editorials from the black and white explosion comics of the 80s that I love so much. The 1986 scene is all about the year 1986, whenever comics really the direct market and comic shops took over the direction of comics in America. And true crime funnies. These are nonfiction stories featuring traditional true crime subject matter like a drug cop, but also featuring some wrestling stories from the early 20th century, as well as an Andy Warhol soiree into wrestling one night. So check those out. Mark your calendar, October 26th, jimrug.com. And if you can't wait that long, you can read a lot of this stuff on my Patreon, patreon.com/jimrug.
The books are the most important part to keep the channel solvent and to keep the videos coming to you on a regular basis. But there are some ways to directly support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Jimmy, let the people know.
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below this video. It's a way for us to keep you up to date on what we have going on and where we're going to be. You can also pick up Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, merchandise, mugs, hats, stickers, all kinds of stuff at our spread shop. And that link is also under this video in the show notes.
There you have it. A plethora of ways to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Jimmy, please give the people their final marching orders and we'll be on our way.
Read more comics.
His lair has 2 arches. It has some like glow in the dark eyes in the back, 2 rooms, and skeletons from all the victims that he has torn apart. So that's what we're gonna be building. And it's funny because
this guy's channel's awesome.
You know, Mortal Kombat has evolved throughout the years. I think we're like in Mortal Kombat like 12 now, right? So they always try to evolve it. They always try to add a little twist to it, but they try to stick to somewhat of the foundations. But when you think about Goro, you think about Goro's lair from part 1 and part 2. Those 2 haven't changed. When you think about Goro, you think about that stage. So that's what we're going to be building today. And this guy's going to help me out. And I'm excited. So let's get to it, guys. I have my sketchbook. This is my book of dioramas that I've sketched throughout the years. And like I always say, guys, sketch out your ideas or use, Tinkercad on the computer to really just start doing your homework now. So here is Goro's lair. Now, Goro's lair is pretty straightforward. You're going to see 2 main arches in the front. You got 2 arches in the back that's in darkness. And you got some eyeballs, like, it looks like some creatures just kind of staring at you in the dark. And then you got like a hallway back there, and then the main hallway where
I'm just doing black here because I'm going to do some splash with some paint and ink later on to make this a little bit more vivid. But he just has a black shirt on. Originally I had his like hands outstretched and some other stuff, but
here's where Goro always ends up fighting. That's what we're going to be building today, guys.
Okay. So it's going to fuse with all that. By the way, these are great markers if you ever get a chance to get these. I think they're graphic, but they're made by Mountain MTN.
Now, this dial is already big.
A lot of times in graffiti shops. I think I got this at a shop in Wynwood in Miami. So you ever get a chance, get one of those. These are really good. These lasted me a while, and they have a good, solid, like black ink. It's not like green black ink or purple black ink. You know? I'm using another one right now. It's dying, so.
So I gotta do some compromises. It's big enough for him, probably just touching a tad on the hair, but perfect for Scorpion. And then we have the skeleton right in the middle to kind of keep things in proportion. So this will be good enough to complete the look and feel that I'm looking for here. Now it's time for some bricks. This, I'm gonna go about it in a couple of different approaches. First, I'm gonna draw it out, and then I'm gonna actually paste the actual bricks. So let's just get into it. This is actually a cool, like, mental therapy of just doing bricks. It's kind of like one of the one-on-one basics of diorama making. So let's get to it. All right. It's the back piece. So what I mean by that is the back part of this die. Depending on your display in there, right? Like, you can make this accurately, right? So I can actually just outline these arches and call it a day. There is some distance between this piece and this piece, and unfortunately, because of the diorama and the limited space, we have to exaggerate that. So to create this illusion, I'm making the opening of this arch smaller to give it the illusion of depth, of distance. As you can see, or once I place it in its proper place, it gives it that illusion of distance. Alright, so next is the floor. I'm looking at this reference right here, and I'm gonna go and try to replicate this on here. Alright, so here as you can see, I outlined the stone floor that I want. Now, before I even get into embroidering all of this out, we're gonna add some texture, some surface treatment. So I have a rock. Now, for people that don't have rocks, you can use foil. So what we're gonna do, I just throw it up in foil, or I can use rock. The whole point of this is that we can make some interesting patterns on this. So when I start pressing, you can start seeing some patterns. Now, you may have to play with this more to get something that comes off natural. Sometimes the foil may do it, but for me, I'm gonna go with this rock. It has all these interesting patterns right here. So I can press this and turn it on myself. Next is magnetizing. I'm gonna go over this real quick. I have these magnets right here. These are great. They're really strong. So these are the ones I've always been using in all my diodes. Now the next tool that I recommend, this is a wood burning tool. You get this at Hobby Lobby. I love that they have this tip because it's exactly the size that I need. Insert these magnets. This tool is not meant for foam, but I've been using it for that. And what I love about it, it has a temperature gauge, and I could make it really hot. I can make it really slow, that it doesn't burn the foam too much. squeeze it in there. It'll start like oozing onto the sides. All right, moment of truth. Ta-da! Real quick, snaps perfectly. Love this part. Next is the brickwork, and I'm here cutting a whole bunch of long strips in different thicknesses. But what I'm doing is that the reason why I drew, the brick is just also as a guide. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start laying them and measuring them and cutting them one by one. There's something really nice about stacking them by hand versus carving them out. I'm pressing for all these unique textures, right? But besides imprinting them, we're gonna make these like really imperfect, right? Chip some of the pieces off. This is a sander, and I'm using this to I'm gonna go and just kind of go over it, right? And as I'm going over it, it's gonna grab the edges and it's gonna peel them off by mistake. That's gonna cause those imperfections. This. So you just started peeling that one off. That one. Just make them random, right? Closer to reality. All right, next up, we're gonna start carving black lines. We're using a wood burner tool here. When I'm carving, this is gonna create some fumes. You use a mask or a fan, whatever you guys feel comfortable, but just make sure you don't breathe in these fumes. So the yellow, that's like the second out of 4 temperatures, so it's like not too hot, but enough to burn. My 120 here. I've been really going at it, right? But at the same time, I'm really trying to rip layers off so it's so perfect. So what I'm doing is I'm pressing down and I'm just peeling. Right? As I'm peeling, and creating that smooth indentations on the rock, like how stone floors should look like, right? Hey. It's looking pretty good. All right, so I got my.
I'm gonna do some gray wash.
And it's a really useful tool, especially with terrains like rocks.
So you guys can kind of see it.
With this
I can take a screenshot.
I'm gonna start shaping this out to make it look more like rocks, as this is the top of the layer, and I'm gonna go in a direction like this, kind of like a cave, right?
So this is where we're at with this. Currently working on a bunch of other stuff. Like a lot of that blood stuff I gotta get in there. If you guys have any questions or looking to get anything done, let me know.
Here's the dial dissolve taken apart. I'm gonna show you guys how simple this guy is to assemble. Got a front piece, got a back piece. Really took my time in going into the carving, going out of my way, going an extra mile, trying a new technique of doing brickwork as I just, cut the pieces out and started stacking them as you would in real life. Decided to add these 2 panels as my client may want to be able to take pictures in there, right? But also the panels also accomplishes that dark feel inside of it. So looking good. Added some skulls that I'm gonna paint over, and then I got the 2 bumps here for the skull to be able to hang from. So, and then my top portion carved it more
Stretched
of
a little.
cave style.
Gotta keep
Now it's
yourself
time for priming.
from fucking going
And
stiff, I
my
swear.
go-to priming is acrylic and Mod Podge. So I'm gonna start getting this all set up so we can start painting those pieces. Priming. Now my go-to prime is Mod Podge with some black acrylic paint that I got from Walmart. And you mix it and you have your own black Mod Podge. Now Mod Podge is great for sealing the foam piece to protect it, but also it prepares the surface for you to be able to start applying paint applications and whatnot. So,
Okay, so now we gotta do some gray.
let's get into painting. First step is dry brushing. What dry brushing is that you're applying a very light coat of paint to any of the edges of a shape. And what that does is that it ends up grabbing and then it starts sticking out and it starts revealing those details.
Yeah, this was a badly cut one, right?
Just to kind of test out my direction of this, right? And you can see here, there's many layers. There's a base of black, there's a highlight of white, and there's some kind of tint on top of it that was a little bit more muddy. I'm gonna get some white, but we're not gonna keep all that. What we're gonna do is gonna get a paper towel. We're gonna just start removing that first layer off the brush. Start going from, in a consistent stroke from left to right, top to bottom, whichever one, but try to stay one consistent flow. And so as you see me doing this, right, you can see that it's catching the details on the edge of the carving to really give it that concrete look that we're looking for. All right, you got a nice dry brush coat. This is not done. Now we're gonna we're gonna try to blend all these things together so that it looks natural. I mean, there's areas that got a little bit more concentrated details and others where it's a little bit more faded. With doing a wash, it tends to balance things out. I got some water.
Let's see if I can cut this.
I'm gonna get some black. Then I'm gonna get some brown. Okay. And now we're gonna mix it. Let's start applying it. Real simple. All you gotta do is just brush it. I'm just gonna leave it on there and let it dry naturally. Alright guys, so now it's dry and it really exposes the areas of where I want to kind of either improve or just add to it. I am noticing some strokes here, so I'm definitely gonna go over it with another layer of dry brush. And again, this is a ongoing thing. You're gonna dry brush, wash, observe, and then go back at it again. I may just go into it in one layer of dry brushing, seal it, and then go over it again with maybe another highlight, or another color. This is looking good. Now I want to start working on this piece over here. Yes, I have the walls, but I want to get some of the base coat painting out of the way. So I'm going to be painting this brown, going to be kind of washing it to kind of blend it in with this, but I'm going to use a brown foundation on this. I'm going to use a spray paint, and to kill 2 birds in 1 stone, I'm going to also use that same spray paint down here, even though I'll definitely touch it up with the paintbrush. I know right now it's really, the contrast is crazy here, right? It's like brown and then gray. So I'm going to be blending these a little bit, maybe
warm up a little bit of the stone and also darken some of the ground. Now we're working on the roof. It's brown. Gonna put some highlights. Gonna use some warm buff and just really just bring out the details before we start going into the washing. Okay. Alright, so let's continue with the dry brushing. Alright, now we're gonna get into details, and you know, at the end I want to wash all of this, but first let's get into the details. So when you wash it, it all adapts together. Some of these bricks are chipped. Some of these bricks are really completely broken, and there's like some empty space in the back. So I'm gonna start adding these kind of like dark browns in there so they could distinguish the background from the foreground. So here you got some black and some brown. Got it looking like almost like espresso coffee. Alright, so now my piece is sealed. Now before I get into washing, I really want to get into some of the details. And one detail that I was just thinking about was cobwebs. And one of my methods of creating cobwebs is using hot glue. And it's really simple. So all we have to do is just press a little and let it touch some areas, right? You can see right there, I'm just pulling. And you can pull multiple times as it's hot. You can see it on the camera. You can see it. It's looking good. So it's a good way to make some cobwebs. So put them in areas where you think it feels right. Next up is to wash it. And I'm going to be using my spray bottle for washing. Now, obviously, a brush is a lot more controlled, but I've tried this method and I got some really nice natural results. So I got some like paint, some water, diluted it, added some brown, and we're gonna be using this and spraying it. Let that just kind of sit there, let it dry up, see if I can keep it. Definitely you can see there's a lot of blending going on already now that it's filling in the cracks. So it's blending in certain areas, and I really want to start getting those streaks of like gunk or wetness that's kind of dripped down. Really want to capture those natural movements. So the next portion is the chain. There's in the middle of this whole display, there's a skeleton hanging. It's being chained up. So that's what I'm gonna create here. Went to Hobby Lobby and found this chain here. Very cool and exactly what I need. And then I got we call them the cuffs, right? Start figuring out how much do I need to get the look that I'm looking for. So, alright, so mission accomplished. I was able to get the chain and put this cuffling area, and it will be enough for me to put any figure on there. That is awesome. Haha. Mission accomplished. Alright, so I just made 2 holes on these. So the cool thing about this, I don't
know, you call it a hook, I guess, but this is the length that I'm giving him, right? So he could like, hang his characters. Could definitely change the length, and with this rod right here, you could definitely make that shorter. So ideally, for this dial, I'm gonna use a skeleton. So and boom, it's great. Definitely enough distance to show him hanging. But in case the chains are too long, depending on the character, you can definitely adjust the chain to control the height. But the goal is, for the client wanted to be able to put any characters. Alright, so next is the two empty spaces on the back, the arches. This is purely pitch black, and you got some glow in the dark eyes. We want to be able to maximize as much depth in these arches by using a thinner material here. So I'll be able to cut this right here. You can go as simple as just drawing them and calling it a day, but you know me, I like to make things so minimize in Photoshop. Simple eyes, but you know, have a nice glow. Now, why do I have this? Because I'm gonna glue it. Just spray it, right? Spray it lightly, evenly, let it dry. Truth. And this is gonna be painful because if you don't do it right, you're freaked. Perfect, no bubbles, awesome. Can you use tacky glue? I'm just not patient enough to use it. So, it's bugging me that this version of my torch that looks pretty badass, I wasn't able to put a light in there. Really annoyed me. But now that I've kind of went through this process, right? What I'm thinking now is redoing that, but trying a different approach. So we got these candles, right? Candles right here, right? Find them dollar store, find them Hobby Lobby. You know, I could definitely insert any light in there. I'm gonna get this from the pipe straws, and insert the flame inside. And there we go. That'll be perfect, and I could definitely insert this light. Boom, mission accomplished. So that's my goal right there, is to go and make this look like a medieval lamp. Okay.
Look, there's no signs of forced entry. What the fuck is all this look like Beirut? Talk home sweet. How do I know it's Mike Lowry? Cause I'm Mike Lowry. Okay, now we ain't got much time.
Okay. I made it where you can take off the flame with no problem. Right, that's when the light bulb is out. Right. Check this out. Mission accomplished. Yeah, getting some blood in here. Mortal Kombat, right? So, got some Citadel paint. This is the contrast one. This is the Blood Angel Red. Really nice. So, let's try it out.
you apart. Fight. Goro wins. Fatality.
Here you go, guys. Here is my Goro layer diorama from Mortal Kombat Part 1. If you guys have ever played the franchise, when you play Goro, you end up in his lair. You know that you're about to beat the game because you always face him at the end. Prince Goro is one of those characters. Now here you got Scorpion with his arms ripped off because Goro just gave him a fatality. You got the iconic skeleton that is hanging by some chains, and you got the iconic also the arches with the glowing eyes in the background. Now, a detail that my client wanted me to add was the lights. Wanted me to add some torches, some flames, and I was able to do it with some LED lights, and it came out really cool. It really does add to the scene. Made it in two different layers. You got the layer where you're able to fight, and then there's another layer in the back where it's mostly in the dark. And I really wanted to have him have the ability to just kind of hide him in the dark, right? And he comes out ready to fight. Added some blood to really talk to the scene of all the different victims. Got some skulls and got some skeletons out. Now it's a dungeon, so one of the things that is different from the actual game, because the game really doesn't depict that, is the actual ceiling. I went more with a cave-like ceiling, just because that's what I from research and references. Dungeons, caves, they're all they start from something, right? So most of the time, the ceiling is more of a rock-like pattern. Now, in general, this diorama was actually very fun, very simple. The part that really was a challenge in this diorama was the method of my brick technique. By cutting the bricks out and laying them out like you would in real life, it really creates this outcome that is very realistic that you will see in real life. So I definitely am proud of the layering of the bricks, and I know my client's gonna go crazy when he sees this. I'm actually very happy about this diorama, and it's just pretty cool to see that I was able to bring this scene to life with the figures from some collectible. I got Goro right here with Scorpion. Done. So, but guys, that is it. This is Goro's layer diorama, and guys, I hope you learned something new. Please, thank you for watching this video. Hit that like button, write a comment, and if you haven't yet, hit subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.
I'm all the way up. All the way up. All the way up. I'm all the way up. Nothing can stop me. I'm all the way up.
Before this video begins, I would like to give a quick thank you to my Asbantium level patrons Fallon Cortez and Nathan Gibson. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. In recent years, Doctor Who and animation have gone hand in hand. From animated specials such as Dreamland to recreations of missing classic Who stories, the medium of animation has now become commonplace for Doctor Who as a franchise. But this wasn't always the case. For many decades, Doctor Who existed in pretty much every other medium. Books, comics, audio dramas, trading cards, everything you can possibly think of. But not animation. This wasn't for a lack of trying. Doctor Who was first animated in 1981 for an unaired Australian ice cream advert, and there were also attempts in the 80s to make a full animated series. The BBC approached Ruby Spears Enterprises in 1984 to make a Saturday morning cartoon for American audiences, but these plans went nowhere. And there were also persistent attempts in the 80s to create a Dalek animated series, with some dialogue even being recorded for a pilot script. Despite a 26-page document outlining 9 episodes and Terry Nation's own potential involvement, things just kind of fizzled out. But there was one animated show in particular that very nearly got made, a continuation of the live-action show, which would have changed everything about Doctor Who as a brand. It's a story full of dramatic twists and turns, corporate tugs of war, and even the involvement of a future Marvel CEO. So strap yourselves in, because this is the story of the new Doctor Who. The year is 1989. America grows a bush, Berlin loses a wall, and absolutely nothing at all happens in Beijing, China. But over in the grey and miserable land of Thatcher's England, 26 years of TV history has just been quietly taken out back and put down. BBC One controller Michael Grade had famously lobbied for years to cancel Doctor Who, but it was his successor Jonathan Powell and BBC head of series Peter Cregan who ended up pulling the trigger, cancelling the show during the production of season 26. And thus, at the ending of the ironically named serial Survival, the Doctor wandered off into the sunset, cursed to walk the world of expanded media for the next 7 years, before he came back for one night only and then disappeared again for another 8 years. Doctor Who as a live-action TV show was dead. For now. As early as 1984, Canadian animation company Nelvana had shown interest in doing something with Doctor Who. Unlike the show at that point, Nelvana were enjoying the peak of their popularity. They'd been founded in 1971 and caught the eye of one George Walton Lucas Jr., who handpicked Nelvana to contribute pretty much the only redeemable part of the derided Star Wars Holiday Special of 1978, which officially introduced Boba Fett, albeit at the expense of Han Solo's skull shape. After a few speed bumps courtesy of their adult feature flop Rock and Roll, Nelvana managed to hit their stride with Care Bears, which was a huge success for the company, along with Star Wars cartoons, droids, and Ewoks. By 1988, Nelvana were an established and respected name with a lot of success under their belt. It was around this time that they properly got into contact with the BBC themselves regarding Doctor Who, negotiations which greatly benefited from Nelvana's good relationship with fellow Canadian and Doctor Who creator Sidney Newman, who put in a good word for his fellow poutine-loving, moose-riding Mounties. This led to BBC Enterprises agreeing to grant Nelvana an annual renewable option to develop an animated Doctor Who series comprising 13 episodes running at 25 minutes each, a similar model to the live-action show itself. In spring of 1991, development on the cartoon began in earnest. The first step was creating a series Bible, a task which Nelvana co-founder and chairman Michael Hirsch gave animator John Decline, who was a self-admitted fan of Doctor Who. Now, if you don't know, a series Bible is basically an in-house document production companies use during pre-production. It's full of background information about the universe and characters, along with general outlines for episodes and storylines. It's a reference guide of sorts to help the production team keep things consistent and plan the show in deep detail. Decline basically had to come up with a new Doctor, a new companion, work out how to adapt the show for the animated medium, and also decide what kinds of villains and creatures to include. On the 10th of May 1991, Decline finished his 6-page series outline titled The New Doctor Who, an animated series. Inside the pages included a description of the Doctor, who has blonde hair, a tall slim figure with a large nose and hands. He looks like a cross between Eric Idle and Ichabod Crane. His costume would comprise of a 1900s gentleman's suit, a blue bowler hat, a morning coat and vest, a large silk cravat, and a butterfly collared shirt with a Nathan Turner staple question mark. The document also introduces iconic Doctor Who features such as the TARDIS and K9, along with villains such as the Master, the Daleks, and the Cybermen. Decline suggested that the Daleks would have a different appearance, evolving into flying Dalek sentries, which are sleek flying machines that glide effortlessly over any landscape and are able to link with each other, transforming into imposing super Daleks. More on that later. Lastly, this series outline introduces the Doctor's brand new companion, an alien freedom fighter named Raven, who is fighting back against the Daleks on a war-torn planet. Raven was directly inspired by Ace, although in Decline's words, Raven is just a little bit hotter. Well, if it isn't the iconic thirst of 90s nerd culture. Raven would have a little pet named Opry, a flying manta ray-like creature who can inflate like a pufferfish or squeeze through narrow holes, and that's basically all it can do. It was pretty useless. Opry and K9 wouldn't get along because the electromagnetic fields allowing Opry to fly also have the side effect of causing issues with K9's circuitry. By the end of May 1991, Decline had penned a 5-page plot outline for the first episode of The New Doctor Who. This pilot episode was titled D is for Daleks and had a pretty standard Doctor Who plot. The TARDIS materializes on a desolate planet and the Doctor stumbles out of K9, his robot companion. An accident on board the TARDIS has caused the Doctor to regenerate into a new body, with the fresh incarnation going through a number of costume changes before settling on his blue bowler hat outfit. He and K9 then set off to explore a bombed out city where they come across Dalek warriors who have been ambushed ambushed by a group of freedom fighters. After running from the explosive fight and being cornered by more Daleks, the Doctor is saved by a female freedom fighter who drags him to safety. She initially suspects the Doctor of working with the Daleks because of K9 being robotic too, but the Doctor quickly clears things up and tells her what the villains are. The woman reveals her name as Raven, agreeing to take the Doctor to meet the other rebels, although before they can arrive, the trio are attacked by Dalek patrol and forced to flee into a forest. Here it turns out that the Daleks can fly now, which is new to the Doctor, but Raven destroys them. Meeting with the freedom fighters, the Doctor explains that they need to work out why the Daleks are here in order to defeat them, but the rebels would rather just attack them directly again. Travelling through the sewers, the Doctor, Raven and K9 come across the giant Dalek spaceship which first landed on the planet. Here they discover the monsters are mining glowing energy crystals which can amplify their energy by 1,000 times and allow them to conquer the universe. They also plan on launching a missile into the planet's sun to cause a solar flare and irradiate the entire planet, killing all life on it except the Daleks, who will now be able to mine the crystals unopposed. With the help of K9 and Opry, the Doctor and Raven infiltrate the ship, although the Doctor is caught by the Supreme Dalek, who soon realises the Doctor's identity. However, when the Supreme Dalek orders the ship to lift off, it is hit by the missile, which the Doctor reprogrammed, destroying all the Daleks. Now liberated, the rebels set up a new government to rebuild their home, although Raven chooses to travel with the Doctor, since she no longer fits in on this world without danger and adventure. The Doctor agrees and offers Raven the choice of the future or the past, with a new companion eagerly asking to travel to the past. And with that, the TARDIS dematerializes for a new adventure. Now that they had a series Bible and a pilot outline, Nelvana's Michael Hirsch, Peter Salder and John Decline met with Anna Holm, the head of children's programmes at the BBC, who had previously commissioned shows like Jack and Ori and Grange Hill. Holm immediately voiced some criticism, showing concerns about the knife and club violence in the show, since these were real issues in the UK at the time. However, Holm's main issue was that the Doctor might come across as too silly. She wrote to Salder on the 18th of July 1991, specifying,
"Although all Doctor Who's have been eccentric, they have not been silly or soft in that sense."
Holm also wasn't particularly keen on the concept art she had been given of this incarnation, believing he looked
too young and too American.
With this feedback in mind, by the beginning of September 1991, Decline had developed a more detailed 29-page writer's guide for the series, now named Doctor Who and the Time Crusaders, not to be confused with the 1981 Terry Gilliam movie Time Bandits, which, by the way, has a very dark ending. The new writer's guide opened with the following premise. This new animated series is about the Time Lord known as the Doctor, and the group of intergalactic adventurers called the Time Crusaders, who travel and help with him defend the universe from evil creatures and diabolical villains. The guide elaborated on the Doctor's backstory, maintaining consistency with the live-action show by confirming the Doctor was born on Gallifrey in the constellation of Cerberus and is over 900 years old, which of course is in line with the ages referenced in Revelation of the Daleks and Time and the Rani. It also elaborated on the Doctor's ability to improvise with everyday items like yo-yos and packs of gum. By this point, Raven had become Rowan with the first name C, which she hates because she believes it makes her sound weak. Rowan would have been born on the planet Carreras in the Bray solar system, and she would have slightly psychic powers, along with the guide comparing her to Emma Peel from the Avengers, which incidentally was also created by Sidney Newman. K9's character became more dog-like, with the robot actually believing he's a dog, chasing cosmic bunnies and tracking down fire hydrants. The titular Time Crusaders would take the form of two allies. These were Axtron, the last survivor of the Earth colony Corvus 3. He was in the middle of being turned into a Cyberman when Doctor Who rescued him, combining the incredible power of his cyber half with the heroic bravery and physical prowess of the man he used to be. The experiences have left Axtron a bitter man with only one goal in life, to seek revenge and destroy all the Cybermen. Alongside Axtron would be Gorge, an ominous ape-like creature with a puppy dog personality who had been freed from slavery by Rowan. The guide describes Gorge as a massive hunk of ape-like alien equipped with an internal hydraulic drive system, which not only adds to his incredible strength, also allows him to link up to all sorts of other devices. This rounds out our Ghostbusters-like quintet of heroes, since Opry had thankfully been poochied between the series Bible and this writer's guide. And yes, the guide actually does draw comparisons to Ghostbusters, because every pitch in modern media history is obsessed with comparing everything to something else. The same guide also makes a point to describe the all-terrain vehicle Bessie as having so many gadgets, she makes James Bond's Aston Martin look like a toy. Lastly, the new writer's guide expanded upon the Doctor's rocky relationship with the Time Lords, acknowledging the two trials the protagonists faced during the events of the live-action show. The Master and the Rani also received very detailed and consistent backstories, along with Davros, who would be crippled by radiation, and uses his artificial third eye as a powerful weapon from where he can direct lightning bolts of energy at his enemies. By the end of September 1991, Nelvana managing director Neil Court met with Tony Greenwood, BBC Director of Home Entertainment, and Michael Shields, BBC Enterprises Business Consultant Manager for Children's Programmes. Bit of a mouthful, that one. The idea around this time was for the joint venture cartoon project to be co-financed by Nelvana and the BBC, now with 26 episodes each running for 30 minutes. However, the show would only properly move forward once 80% of the budget had been secured by pre-sales and licensing agreements. They basically had to sell broadcasters a show that didn't exist yet in order to raise the money to make said show. Nelvana would deal with the North and South American distribution of the show, whilst BBC Enterprises would handle the rest of the world in exchange for pocketing 75% of the show's profit, leaving Nelvana with 25%. Because, that's how maths works. By this stage of the process, things were going swimmingly, and various artists were creating concept art for all the characters and creatures to be featured in the show. The most notable of these artists were John Decline himself and artist Ted Bastian, who worked on the designs for somewhere between 6 months and a year, with Bastian later saying they were directed to make it like a Mobius Jean Girard style of animation. Jean Girard had, under the name Mobius, created a lot of sci-fi and fantasy comics, along with working on concept art for films like Alien, Tron, and the unmade Alexandro Jodorowsky adaptation of Dune, which is its own famous rabbit hole. For a reason still somewhat unknown and probably lost forever, by mid-November 1991, the entire Writer's Guide document had been completely rewritten by new writer David Cole, who had previously worked on a number of Canadian live-action shows. This new 40-page document was a very sharp departure from Doctor Who's long-established history, something Decline's version had tried its best to adhere to. Cole basically came in and changed everything. The TARDIS was now an alternative regenerator, the Gallifreyan equivalent of an instant photo booth. Rather than stealing the TARDIS to flee Gallifrey out of boredom, the Doctor would have instead crammed himself into the booth while drunk on Fintado cocktails along with his colleagues from the Space Science Academy and Dance Studio. The booth would be struck by lightning and all the students would tumble out, apart from the Doctor, who is left in the TARDIS alone and now travels through time. Yeah, it's awful. Cole also decided the TARDIS would indeed change its shape every time it landed, unlike in the live-action show where it always remained a police telephone box. Along with this change to his ship, the Doctor would now carry two gadgets. There was the Obfuscator, able to make an enemy doubt and second-guess their motives, and there was the Carillion, a bell-like crystal which would make all the invisible wavelengths in the area visible and audible to confuse an opponent. Sounds like they could just be combined into one, that would save a bit of carrying space. However, possibly the worst change in this guide is Rowan renaming K9 as Orson, the name of a dog she had back on her home planet, which is a name K9 hates, but is forced to stick with for whatever reason. Cole also changed K9's character, describing him as follows.
K9 is a lovable goof who creates many problems for the Doctor as he solves. Oh yes, he's the world's worst watchdog. Unless you appeal to the computer in him and describe to the last detail what you want him to be on the lookout for, you might wake up and find Orson playing fetch with a horde of Daleks.
That basically sounds like the most surface-level misunderstanding of K9 as a Doctor Who character. Cole also created a ruling trio of Time Lords. There was Magnar the Patriarch, the chairman of the Time Lord Council, who is
a cosmic by-the-book bureaucrat who believes that perhaps the universe would be better off without Doctor Who's incessant frivolity, but knows that there is no one in space or time better equipped to assist the Time Lords.
Magnar is a cyborg with an
outer body shell crisscrossed with transparent tubes which process liquids through a breastplate canister type attachment. Magnar is a closed system and literally feeds off himself.
Next is Celis the Life Giver, a human-like time lady who admires the Doctor's free-spirited lifestyle, and it's hinted that the pair even have a potential romance. Lastly is Roki the Defender, a reptilian-like mischievous character who aims to enlist the Doctor into complex plots without his knowledge, and also seeks to usurp Magnar as chairman. Cole also provided an updated description of the Master and the Rani, suggesting that the Master has
substituted parts of his own body with more powerful, crippling metallic devices,
and saying the Rani is
a brilliant biochemist who at one point was the ruler of an entire planet where she enslaved the population with mind-controlling chemicals.
Not sure why the Master is a cyborg now, or why he suddenly has a metal bird, but at least the Rani is still pretty consistent. Meanwhile, the two Time Crusaders were removed in favour of legally distinct, totally not Star Wars characters Slade Starmac, a thieving and buccaneering conman, and the furry bipedal alien Frang. Yeah, definitely not anything I've seen before. Have you ever seen anything like this? No, I don't think so. It's very original. It would be an understatement to say John DeCline absolutely hated this writer's guide when it was passed to him. He promptly responded with a brutal 4-page long memo listing 15 specific issues. He claimed it placed too much emphasis on the Doctor's conflict with the Time Lords, who DeCline saw as pretty boring, especially when it came to merchandising, since there would be little value in characters who sit around and talk. He also believed this emphasis would diminish the Master and the Rani's villains, alongside the other characters and villains set to appear. DeCline also blasted Cole for the unnecessary changes to K9 and the TARDIS, noting that the police box was the one icon from the live-action show the team hadn't redesigned. Judging by this memo, Cole had also suggested the Doctor's real name be revealed, something DeCline immediately and rightfully dismissed as being stupid. Lastly, DeCline tore the origin story to pieces, calling the cocktail party background insulting and contradictory to the established history of the Doctor. It's safe to say DeCline was very much not happy with how things were developing. This kind of rivalry continued towards the end of December 1991, once David Cole finished the 32-page draft script for the pilot episode, which inexplicably was titled Doctor Who Goes Hawaiian. To this day, nobody seems to actually know why. The story fleshed out the general concept of DeCline's Dias for Daleks, but when the script landed on his desk, he once again tore into it, starting with the ridiculously bad title, along with criticising inconsistencies with the Daleks, who seemed to constantly be inside and outside of their casings, as if Cole didn't actually understand what the villains were or how they worked. They were written as dropping to the floor, crawling along corridors, and even passing hands through beams, along with Cole seemingly forgetting that Rowan should know who the Daleks are because, she's fighting against them. And DeCline also rejected the idea of oxygen being deadly to Daleks because, that's kind of dumb. The dialogue was also very Americanized, with K9 saying things like, "Hey buddy, got a light?" along with the Daleks speaking like people with lines such as, "Yes, yes, I know who you are. What do you want? We're very busy here." When asked about Doctor Who Goes Hawaiian, DeCline had this to say: "I didn't like the script. I had watched a lot of Doctor Who long before being asked to adapt it into an animated series, so I felt that even though the animated show would have been quite different from the live-action series, I still had the responsibility to make it as true as I could for its numerous fans." Along with this, Klein accused Cole of only doing the script for money without actually knowing anything about Doctor Who, even though the writer was supposedly a fan. This embarrassing pilot script partly drove Klein away from the show entirely, mainly because it adapted his original outline without giving him any kind of credit. He refused to do any more storylines for the show until he got a guaranteed story credit for them. But when this was rejected in 1992, Klein walked away from the project entirely. Towards the end of 1991, Nelvana worked out that their initial budget for the show would be $200,000, already having spent over $79,000 by January 1992. So they advised the BBC that the actual overall production costs would total somewhere between $350,000 and $450,000 per episode. That might sound like a lot, but a big potential moneymaker in the deal was the potential for toys and video games, something other cartoons were pumping out at the time. The artists were told to make their designs as toy-friendly as possible, with Nelvana turning to Avi Arad to broker the merchandising deals. Arad had worked as a toy designer for the 3 major American toy companies at the time, before later working as Marvel's exclusive toy engineer and, only going on to become the literal chairman, CEO, and founder of Marvel Studios. So the same guy responsible for producing movies like Iron Man, Into the Spider-Verse, and the best movie ever, Morbius, almost sold Doctor Who toys. It's a wild and wacky world indeed. At the end of January 1992, Arad had negotiated for Tycho to take on the merchandising contract for Nelvana's Doctor Who cartoon. Tycho was the world's
So the grays are down,
and
everything
the plan
is
was for the
good.
toys to be ready for marketing by the 1993 toy fairs. Arad had
Alright, so we got all the grays down. We got shading. I gotta go do blacks on here. I got a couple other things that, this stuff is gonna get shaded afterwards probably. Because now I gotta color this first. I want to color all this first, then do the red, which is gonna splatter. And then we'll see from there what else. Because I was thinking of doing a slight green on the background. Again, let this dry completely, and then I'll work on that. So if you tune in tonight at 8, you'll see all that and more. Till then, I'll see you guys later.